have a daughter in her 20s, and she hasn't been inside of her local bank branch. How do you continually create value based on what they're telling you today is important, that were pain points for employees that also get addressed or brought to the surface, to your point, going through this process? You have an overall customer experience strategy for your business.
Hello and welcome back to Klik TV. Here we talk to businesses and discuss the ways they leverage technology for better business success. My name is Julia, and my guest today is Mark Slatin, CEO and founder of Empowered CX. So how would you suggest that a business start their journey map?
Well, I think first, I would suggest take a journey of a customer that either is the most common journey that you have, your core customer journey, and take it end to end, which is a big process. Or you could take a sub-process of that, or a smaller product as a starter, as a way to introduce it to the organization. Whichever journey you pick, you go ahead and you have usually pre-work that's done on gathering information about what are kind of the key behaviors, what's a persona of a typical customer that we're going to use to walk through the journey with. Then you go through the workshop, and then afterwards is really important, is to strategize based on priorities that come out of solutions that the group has come up with, ideas for solutions, and then you start to build a roadmap for your CX strategy and plug in those things that you learned from the journey map right into that strategy.
Okay, that's great. It's not only a good process for internally, but for externally, because you're building team bonding within that team, the business that you're helping, but also externally, you're helping the customer process. You're building that up.
Yeah, I think point you make is interesting, is that, yeah, you're trying to improve the customer experience. In the process, you're seeing silos come down between departments as you're going through it, because instead of this happening, right, they're focusing on the customer. They're focusing, all their attention and focus is on what the customer is going through at each stage of their journey. And when they got talking about it, they're not talking about what's happening on our side, at least if it's facilitated correctly, which is an easy trap to fall back into, because we always think about things from our own vantage point. But you're being forced to think about things through the customer's lens. And when you're doing that, I remember one employee who had been with the organization I was with for 12 years, and he said it was the single best day he's been with the organization, because they finally got past a lot of the infighting that was happening, a lot of the walls, and got to some real problem solving by taking themselves out of their typical day-to-day shoes.
Yeah, you get all the problems and rise them to the surface. You can talk about it, fix all the problems internally and externally that you need to do.
Yeah, because usually, to your point, the employee experience is highly affected by the feedback that we get in this process, and employees are right in the middle of it. So if there's a hiccup or friction in the employee experience, it's going to affect the customers. And if there's problems going on with customer experience, employees will be able to know about it and feel it. And so we end up killing two birds with one stone, because typically there are some major employee issues that were pain points for employees that also get addressed or brought to the surface, to your point, going through this process.
That's great. Okay, so one more question. I know you just brought up an experience, but can you tell me about another experience you had with a satisfied customer, either with journey mapping or any other service that you offer?
Yeah, I think a big part of what I do is overall strategy for customers, and as it comes to customer experience. And sometimes I work with people who are inside of organizations that already have a customer experience professional working in there. One thing that I typically find is that there are companies that get stuck. They get stuck with, where do I go? And there's a whole bunch of reasons for why things get stuck. There's a whole bunch of a number of different factors that are obstacles to building this engine, really, a CX engine, a customer experience engine, that can help your organization be agile and change and shift based on whatever is going on in the marketplace. And so a typical problem might be an acquisition, right? Just going through an integration, everything else is on hold. Well, you've got typical corporate politics where my department is whatever. You got friction happening there. I think one of the things that's important is to remember that leadership needs to be engaged, and leadership is the C-suite, and C-suite, you need to speak their language. And recently with a customer, I had a chance to help them. They did a great job of setting up a customer experience dashboard that had feedback data from what the customers felt, like a little radio dial on what they scored. Wow. Operational data that was connected to that, financial data that said how much the value was. But what was missing was a clear explanation to senior management that answered the question, so what? Right? What's the outcome? Mm-hmm. What can we do about it? What's controllable? What should we be doing? And what's the so what? And the so what typically has to do with, we can reduce the number of calls coming into the call center, for example, by 30%. Utilize those people more efficiently on really value-oriented things that create value for the organization and for the customer. So just being able to kind of reframe what the problem is and where the gap may be in getting work through that was stuck.
Wow. That's great.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or highlight?
The only thing I would add is that if people want to learn more about customer experience in general, or how to build a CX roadmap, I have a couple of tools, a couple of things that are available on my website, empoweredcx.com. One of those is I have a podcast, so it's called Delighted Customers Podcast, and I have a lot of really cool guests. I mentioned Rob Markey. The other person involved in creating Net Promoter Score was Fred Reichelt. He was on my show. Bruce Temkin. I had just incredible array of people who are kind enough to bless me to be on the Delighted Customers Podcast. So that comes out every Thursday, a new episode on all your major platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Also, there is some free downloads on my website. You can get Build Your CX Roadmap. On there, I have a maturity assessment. So if you want to know where your organization is today, you can take a free assessment. I would personally call you back and review the results of that assessment. So you at least get a benchmark or a baseline on where to start, maybe what some gaps are that you need to close. So those are, and there are more tools and freebies out there on my website that they can come visit. And I'm also available on LinkedIn if they want to.
Yeah, we'll link everything in the description below.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I think everyone should really check out the podcast, the website, all of the tools. I think they are really beneficial. We've already experienced some of the journey mapping stuff with Mark today, and it was really great. So thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. Thanks so much for having me on the show.